Hook 0 to 15s. Your company doesn't need to fire you. They just need you to believe they might. And right now, that belief is worth billions. Tension, 15 to 60s. Here's what's actually happening in workplaces across the country right now. Productivity is up. Hours worked are up. Salary growth has stalled. And burnout rates just hit a number that NAMI called, in their own words, a public health inflection point. But the strangest part? Most people aren't angry about this. They're grateful. Grateful to still have a job. Grateful they haven't been replaced yet. Grateful that the algorithm chose someone else this quarter. That gratitude is not an accident. It was engineered. Body. Let's go back about 3 years. The conversation around AI in the workplace started as something genuinely exciting. Productivity tools, automation of the boring stuff. The idea that technology would finally free workers from the mundane so they could focus on creative, meaningful work. That was the pitch. But here's what nobody tells you. The way a technology gets introduced to workers is almost never about the technology. It's about power. And the language business leaders use when they talk about AI to their employees is revealing in a way that should make you deeply uncomfortable. CNBC published an analysis earlier this year where they looked at how executives actually talk about AI internally versus how they talk about it in earnings calls. And the gap is stunning. On earnings calls, AI is about growth, expansion, new revenue, competitive advantage. But in employee all-hands meetings, AI is almost always introduced through the lens of survival. Efficiency requirements, headcount reviews, the need to do more with less. Same technology, two completely different psychological framings. One is meant to excite investors, the other is meant to manage workers. And managing workers in this context doesn't mean supporting them. It means making them compliant, grateful, quiet. Now let's talk about what that actually does to a human brain. There's a well-documented psychological phenomenon called threat rigidity. When a person perceives a serious threat to their survival, their thinking narrows. They become less creative, less likely to take risks, less likely to ask for raises, push back on unreasonable deadlines, or advocate for themselves in any way. They focus almost entirely on not losing what they already have. Threat rigidity was originally studied in the context of organizations facing external crises. But researchers have found it works just as powerfully on individuals facing job insecurity. So when your company sends out a memo about AI-driven restructuring, when your manager casually mentions that the new system can handle tasks your department used to require 3 people for, when the LinkedIn algorithm keeps showing you articles about which jobs are most at risk, your brain enters a state that makes you easier to manage, more willing to accept stagnant wages, more likely to work weekends without asking why, more afraid to negotiate. And here's the thing. None of this requires your employer to lie to you. The threat doesn't even need to be real or immediate. It just needs to feel plausible. Plausibility is enough. Now you might be wondering, is this conscious? Do business leaders actually sit in rooms and think about how to use AI anxiety as a management tool? The honest answer is, sometimes yes, sometimes no, and it almost doesn't matter. Because systems don't need conscious villains to produce harmful outcomes. They just need incentives. And the incentive structure of modern business strongly rewards keeping labor costs low and worker output high. AI anxiety does both of those things at once, which means even leaders who genuinely believe they're being transparent are still participating in a system that extracts more from workers while giving back less. Let's look at the numbers for a second. Since 2023, worker productivity in the United States has increased by a significant margin. AI-assisted tools have compounded that. Meanwhile, real wage growth when adjusted for inflation has remained nearly flat for the median worker. The gains from that productivity increase went somewhere. They went up, into margins, into stock buybacks, into executive compensation packages. The workers who made it possible, they got something too. They got to keep their jobs, for now. And somehow, that's started to feel like enough. But here's the curiosity loop I want you to sit with for a moment. If workers are more productive than ever, and companies are more profitable than ever, why does every single workplace feel like it's running on empty? Why does the 2026 NAMI Workplace Mental Health Poll show that over 60% of full-time employees report that work-related stress is significantly affecting their mental health? Why are therapists reporting that job anxiety is now one of the top 3 presenting issues across all demographics? Why do people who have good, stable, well-paying jobs still wake up at 3 a.m. convinced they're about to lose everything? Because the fear isn't a side effect. The fear is the product. A workforce operating under chronic low-grade threat is a workforce that self-manages. You don't need a supervisor standing over someone's shoulder if that person has already internalized the belief that they are replaceable. They'll monitor themselves. They'll push themselves. They'll sacrifice rest, health, relationships, and long-term thinking for the immediate relief of feeling like they did enough today. This is what economists sometimes call the managed insecurity model. You keep workers just secure enough that they don't leave and just insecure enough that they don't resist. AI didn't create this model, but it has given it a new and extremely effective story to tell. Climax. Here is the central thing I want you to understand. The anxiety you feel about AI is not irrational. Some jobs will change. Some will disappear. That's real. But the specific shape your anxiety takes, the way it makes you feel personally insufficient rather than systemically pressured, the way it makes you work harder for the same pay and feel grateful about it, that shape was not accidental. Your fear has been productized, not by a conspiracy, by a system that has always found ways to convert worker insecurity into shareholder value. AI is just the newest and most convincing version of a story that has been told before. With automation, with outsourcing, with the gig economy, the details change. The mechanic stays the same. The moment you name that mechanic, it starts to lose its power over you. Ending. I'm not telling you to stop worrying about the future of work. That would be naive. The changes are real and they deserve serious attention. But there is a difference between responding to a real threat with clear eyes and spending the next decade of your working life in a state of manufactured dread that benefits everyone except you. The most radical thing a worker can do right now is refuse to let fear be the primary operating system. Not recklessness, not denial, just the quiet, deliberate refusal to let someone else's narrative about your replaceability become the story you tell yourself every morning. Because here's the last thing. The companies most aggressively using AI anxiety as a management tool. They're also the ones most dependent on the human creativity, judgment, and institutional knowledge of the very workers they're trying to keep afraid. They need you more than the narrative suggests. And somewhere in a board meeting you'll never be invited to, they know it.